Hi, Suzanne here. I want to talk about part of the history of abstract art. And in particular, there's a term that was coined in the 1940s by a Frenchman called Lyrical Abstraction. And it mostly came about from the artists in Europe. And it was very similar to the movement that was happening or beginning to happen in the United States, which we call abstract expressionism. The French critic Jean-José Marchand in 1947 called what he saw the trend of personal expression in Europe to be what he called abstraction lyrique. And what he referred it to was the idea of free, emotive, personal compositions unrelated to objective reality. And if you think about it, they can even be traced back earlier to the early part of the 20th century to Vasily Kandinsky. Kandinsky felt there was a mystery that we're tapping into. We may not know the meaning of what it is when we do our art, but we're tapping into something greater and deeper and more than the human being, becoming more towards a spiritual aspect. In other words, the approach that Kandinsky and others of his time was that they didn't know the meaning there might be in what they painted. They hoped by simply painting freely without preconceived notion of aesthetics or the objective world, something unknown could be expressed through their work. Kandinsky likened painting to musical compositions, which communicated emotion in a completely abstract way. His abstract paintings were imaginative, emotive, expressive, personal, passionate, and completely subjective. In other words, they were lyrical. And I love this meaning, this personalized, expressive meaning, not necessarily knowing what it is, but allowing it to come up from a deep place and be expressed through whatever brushstroke, whatever medium, whatever method the artist wants. They're recognizing it's coming from a deeper place. And I think it's really about that intention. So lyrical abstraction to me is about where the perspective is, where the intention is. It's not what I think of what Jackson Pollock was about, even though he was an action painter. He liked the movement and the rhythm, and that was really what he was looking at. You might consider that he had some lyrical abstraction tendencies because he was willing to not know and what it would be conjuring up. But I think his perspective was more about the dance of the activity as the action painter. And so you can see that's how we're getting into the nuances of abstract expressionism. And lyrical abstraction is just a perspective and a viewpoint. It wasn't about the work looking the same or anything. It was about the perspective of working with our personal inside material, bringing it out and allowing it to surface without getting in the way of it, without thinking, with letting it spontaneously emerge, and knowing it's coming from this deep place where meaning is unknown, but it might come out and be seen by the viewers or by the artists themselves. The other thing that I want to mention that Kandinsky brought up, that he was really interested in connecting with the mysteries of the universe, the mysteries of life itself in a very open way, and that he never felt it could be fully explained or understood. And this is like having some existentialist input as the way of being when you're painting and when you're delving into yourself. It's a philosophy that came after World War II, when we were trying to understand the meaninglessness of life, Existentialists sought to overcome this meaningless of what they saw as destruction in war and everything by going inward and finding personal meaning to life, not an overarching meaning to life. And I think that's what Kandinsky was doing before, early on in the 1930s, was trying to get at that deeper meaning. And knowing that we're creating meaning in our own world, and that personal meaning. After abstract expressionism started to lose its popularity, it was overtaken by more conceptual thinking, which was minimalism, pop art, this kind of thing. And it didn't come back into favor again until the late 60s, when this revival to return to personal meaning and personal expression became important again. And I think from then on, it has always been an undercurrent, and in some places, a very important part of the art that is being made. Where we really try to make sense out of the world in some way, and we're living in a mystery. And if we're willing to take that on and accept the unknowns, that there are unknowns and that we have no control over it, when we step into our studio and start creating, we find that that's what art is about. We're stepping into the unknown and what it is taking us inward and deeper, and we're finding our own personal meaning, which is what is emerging. And we hope it speaks to others as a universal truth. But the real thing that speaks is our commonality, that we're all humans, we're all searching to make sense of our own world. And so it's a very powerful method to express ourselves. So I feel this lyrical abstraction is here to stay. It borders on accepting that there's something greater and more powerful, and holds all of creativity. It borders on that spiritual aspect. And I want to read a quote that Helen Frankenthaler, which was one of the later lyrical abstract artists, wrote. She said, "There is a balanced aesthetic elegance one can immediately sense in lyrical abstraction. The art of lyrical abstraction allows us to ponder meanings and emotions in ways that mere stripes of color, for instance, don't. Lyrical abstraction has something to say, and it often takes on the dynamics of psychological exploration. It may or may not include suggestions or representations of imagery from the natural world. The paintings may vary widely in visual effect, but all share a common intent, evoking feelings of essence, and that all-important connection to higher, more esoteric worlds. And I like that idea because it opens it up to have referential to nature or to objects. It doesn't limit it to non-objective. Even though the process may be non-objective, we may end up having some connection to recognizable objective reality. Here's Kandinsky, the forerunner of the lyrical abstraction movement. And you can see how he's working with just the spontaneity, the openness, the unknown. In his later work, you can see that there's more obvious shapes, recognizable shapes, but that still was spontaneous and with not knowing what this all meant. Paul Klee was also one of these early thinkers, again in the 30s, working with color and exploring the unknown with color and shapes. Alfred Otto Wolfgang Schultz, otherwise known as Wolz, was in the 40s, working at the time when the lyrical abstraction was defined. He was a lesser known artist, but had that same philosophy. George Mathieu was very instrumental in this movement. A French artist, very prolific, very well known, and very well liked. Pierre Soulages was a French painter during the late 40s in the lyrical abstraction movement. We jump to the late 1960s, where Helen Frankenthaler was reviving the lyrical abstraction, and so was Jean-Paul Riopelle, a Canadian artist, in liaison with another American artist, Joan Mitchell. They were very active in this movement. Jules Olitsky was an artist working in the United States. And finally, we see Mark Rothko, but there were many, many artists that were working in the lyric abstract movement at that time, as well as continuing forward until this day.